One more bit of off-season business is handled. Dmitri Voronkov has been extended. He's got a shiny new contract. Let's talk about that and what we can expect from Voronkov this season on this bonus Locked on Blue Jackets.
You're Locked on Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked on Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I am your host, Jay Foster. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Just a quick one today. We're going to talk a little bit about the Dmitri Voronkov contract extension, which kind of came out of nowhere, honestly. I fully assumed that this was going to drag on, based on a couple of things that I'll talk about in a minute here. But Voronkov extended 2 years at 8.35, or 4.175 per year, 8.35 total, through the 2026 season. I am surprised by this in a lot of ways. So, first of all, I'm surprised that it came together so quickly because I genuinely thought that this might drag out. I believe today was the last. I believe in a couple hours, actually, is the deadline to file for arbitration. So they did not get to. I didn't think that they would go to arbitration. I thought that they might file for arbitration and then, figure it out beforehand. But they seem to have fixed it, sorted it. Again, kind of surprised that it came together. I genuinely thought this might be one that would drag on, especially in light of there were not necessarily conflicting reports, but I know that Don Waddell spoke very, very highly of Dmitri Voronkov, and then also turned around and was like, but also he's got to get in shape for next season. So I wondered if that would, not have an impact on the negotiations necessarily, but I wonder if that is the reason that it's short-term, high-ish AAV, right? I expected them, honestly, I could have seen both ways, right? And I think I talked about this when I did the Voronkov kind of season recap review type episode a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of months ago now, actually. Basically, I was like, I could see them doing, 2 years at a higher level, or I could see them doing, 5 to 6 years at a lower AAV. It looks like they went short-term, not high AAV, but Evolving Hockey, who I've used before for contract projections, had it at 2 years at 3.8 million. So it came in at about 400K above that. So, honestly, pretty spot on, which is impressive. I thought he might get another year. I thought it might be 3 years. I do think that this is another one of those young core show me contracts, right? We saw it with Johnson, we saw it with Chinikov, we saw it with Sillinger, Marchenko, etc. Now another bridge deal, I guess, technically, with Voronkov coming in. I believe he's got 2 seasons until he hits UFA after this. Or 1 season, excuse me. So he's got this season and next season. And then, so his contract runs out the 26-27 season. And then at the end of the 27-28 season, he becomes a UFA. So I wonder if that's something as well, is they don't want to walk him directly to UFA, but they also don't want to give him that 4th year necessarily. So again, not really a show me contract. I think they know what kind of player he is, but definitely a kicking the can down the road type of contract, which I don't hate. And I like Voronkov a lot. I upset some people when I said that I probably would have included him in a trade for Dobson, but I do like him as a player a lot. I think he has improved leaps and bounds since joining the Blue Jackets. Yes, the conditioning I do think is a problem. He was basically invisible for long stretches of kind of the second half of the season. But on the other hand, he had 23 goals this season. He is only 24 years old. In 148 games, he's got 81 points. So he's over half a point a game. leads the club in power play goals over those 2 seasons, which is pretty impressive. And took on a big role this season. He was the third guy on that Monahan-Marchenko line, or the Fantilli-Marchenko line, depending on what time in the season it was, and kept up better than expected. I do think that, some of his downfalls, I guess, that sounds really dramatic, but I think if you improve the conditioning, then I think you're going to get a much better Voronkov next season. And that's not to say that he was bad this season, but a more well-conditioned Voronkov means he probably will be, the season's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And I think if he has that staying power to, keep going. Yes, he finished with 23 goals. Next season, do we expect 25 to 30 goals from Voronkov, right? Especially if he's going to play on that top line with Marchenko and Monahan, which I think is where a lot of people have kind of slotted him so far. But is he's okay. So that's the one thing, right? But the second thing is he is going to continue to be the player he is, right? Which is he's never going to be the best skater in the world. He's never going to be the fastest skater in the world. He has a game that has made that work for him, right? Like, he is a very different player to James Van Riemsdyk, but I think that there's something worth comparing there, right? If James Van Riemsdyk somehow managed to have 16 goals this season, despite not being as fleet of foot as he used to be, and he was never the fastest player in the world, but, he makes the game work for his style. And Voronkov, I think, did a really admirable job at the beginning of the season, especially in doing that as well. He's never going to be fast, but he's got good hands. He's got good hockey sense. I think he and Marchenko work really well together. And I think if he can, again, figure out the conditioning and not get gassed like 60 games into the season, then there's definitely something there that I think is going to be really, really exciting. I'm pleased that they didn't trade him. Like when I spoke a minute ago, I was like, yeah, I would have probably included him in the Dobson trade. And again, people got really mad at me about that. I still think I would have done that, but that doesn't mean that I'm not pleased that he's still here, right? Like, he's been mentioned on a couple of articles of like, these are players to watch out for in potential trade situations. But I do just think is them going, oh, he was involved in the Dobson trade. They must want to move him, despite the fact that all evidence points to, the opposite of, they kind of balked at trading Voronkov, and it looks like he's sticking around. It looks like he's not going to be a trade piece for Jordan Kyrou or Bowen Byram or whoever is the trade of the day that they're trying to say that that Columbus will make, right? But all in all, to kind of summarize my thoughts here, I like this contract a lot. I do think it is a Shobi contract. I do worry that it is a little bit like, not necessarily kicking the can down the road, but by the time his contract is up, it's going to be the 2027 offseason. Kromachenko is going to need a new contract in that year. Kent Johnson is going to need a new contract in that year. And Denton Matejchuk is going to need a new contract in that year. Now, Elvis Merzlikins' money will come off the books in that year. So, there's an extra $5.5 million to play with. Obviously, the cap is going to keep going up. I think by the end of next season, it's going to be like 114 million or something. Like, it's going to be stupid high. So I'm not worried about the cap hit of trying to fit all of those players in. But if Voronkov takes off like they are clearly hoping that he does, if Marchenko continues to play at the level he does, if Kent Johnson takes off the way that he's looking like he's going to, like, that's going to be an expensive offseason for the Blue Jackets. Matejchuk as well, again, coming off his entry-level contract, like, that's going to be a really interesting offseason. And I get why it's done the way that it was. Obviously, they didn't want to do 1 year. They don't want to do 3 years or 4 years. So, like, 2 was really the only acceptable contract length. But, man, it's going to be a really interesting... the 2027 offseason is going to be really, really interesting, I think. All in all, great contract. Don't hate it. The opposite, in fact. Really, really excited to see what Voronkov does next season. It looks like he's been working during the summer with the guy that trains Evgeny Malkin, who I think is not a comparable for Voronkov necessarily, but definitely someone that Voronkov should like aspire to be like. I'm not saying that he can manifest his way into being Malkin, but Malkin is another guy who is, he's on the bigger side and has never been the best skater in the world, I think is fair to say, but made it work for him, right? So if Voronkov can, learn from Malkin, Voronkov can get in shape, do some cardio this summer instead of just lifting weights. I'm really, really excited for Big Boss to get even bigger, so we'll see how it goes. I'm excited. Really, really solid contract extension. Would I have liked them to lock him up long term and just be like, okay, then we're done with it? Sure. But I understand the reasoning of why they were like, okay, 2 years, That's kind of all I've got today, though. We'll be back, not tomorrow. Tomorrow is Sunday. We'll be back on Monday with a new episode. So thank you for listening to this bonus episode, for making it potentially your first listen of the day. Every single day, Locked On Blue Jackets is your hopefully is your first listen of the day every single day. And we're free and available on all podcast platforms, over on YouTube. And you can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter and LO-Blue Jackets on Blue Sky. Once again, I've been your host, Jay Foster. And until Monday, make sure you stay locked on.